What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about things that you may be doing that have the potential to ruin your hard work that you put in on your mixes. Now, in full disclosure, I don't believe there's any mistakes when it comes to mixing. You've probably seen tons of videos online, 10 new mistakes somebody's making or all the mistakes you're making. I actually don't believe that. I believe there is only one fundamental flaw that we have the potential to make, and anything after that we label a mistake is usually a direct result of that. And in my opinion, that is not having a plan or vision for where you want to take this mix. And I'm going to break this down into 3 question/points that you can ask yourself to help keep you on track when you're working on a mix. And first and foremost, the first question is, who and what are you listening to? Now, the who means who are we taking our direction from? And in my opinion, there are 2 entities there that we should be taking direction from. First is the artist. Whether it's a solo artist or a band, we want to take all of our cues from the artist. What is their vision for the product? What is their final expectation? Because if we don't know that, then we're really kind of flying blind. And as I learned the hard way early on, you are pretty much sure to deliver something that is probably going to be less than satisfactory because we're not as firmly dialed into the vision. The second entity that we should be taking our cues from is ourself. And that's where we bring our own authenticity to the project. That's what makes me mixing something different than you or anybody else that might be out there. And that's why, many different artists, especially artists with budgets, might audition a few mixers for a project to see what each one brings to the table and how that kind of concept and that vision can marry ultimately with the artist or the producer's vision. So who and what are you listening to? The who should be the artist and yourself. Now let's hop into DAW and I'm going to show you some things that you can be listening to when it comes to the music.
I'd say the biggest mistake that I see is not knowing whether you are mixing for a V or a U. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm referring to the tightness of the center of the mix, mainly your bass. So you're talking about in the center of a mix, typically we have our kick drum, our bass guitar, snare drum, vocals. And how tight and powerful do we want the center of this mix to feel? Typically, the tighter the center of the mix, the more powerful the mix feels, the more polished the mix feels because we have a clean, articulate low end. The wider the mix, more of like a U shape for the center where we have bass spilling out into the sides, that tends to give more of a soundscape or a thematic feel. Things tend to kind of congeal and are a little more blurry. That works well for indie music where things might not, be designed to sound super polished and super pop. So I have a song queued up. I have the last hook of the song ready to go, and I'm going to play it to you without any bass guitar in the song at all. And then I have 2 different listening examples, one where the bass is in stereo and one where the bass is in mono. So first, let's just get a sense of what it is we're dealing with. So we have a Morrissey kind of vibe. The artist wanted this to feel, very, very lo-fi, as I quickly found out by not following my own advice. But let's listen first with a mono bass. Now, the basses both have the same processing on them. The only thing I did was have to just adjust the volume a little bit. So nothing's different here. Identical processing. Let's just listen to it first in mono. Now, what you may notice is when we were in mono, the low end was punchier, it felt more defined, and the instruments on the side also had their own space. So a lot of engineers who use LCR panning, which stands for left, center, right, which basically means that you only put something far left, far right, or down the middle to create space in a mix, will use that for a tight V, where they'll put all their bass instruments nice and tight in mono down the center. When you're in mono, what you'll notice is how tight the center of the mix is. We have the vocal, snare, kick, and bass all kind of pulling us down the center, and it allows some space for the side instruments to pop. Stereo, the low end and the bass starts to smear a little bit. The kick, the bass, they kind of run together, and that low end spillage out into the sides also washes out a little bit of the articulation and the definition of the melodic instruments. Now, again, that's great when you're looking for things to feel a little smeared, a little more soundscapey, kind of thematic and larger than life. But if you're looking for kind of say, a powerhouse rock kind of mix, things are going to get you're a little too unrefined in the low end. And again, keep your ear on the bass guitar and the kick drum. And then also the level of pressure that you're noticing if you're listening in headphones, the level of pressure that you're feeling in both ears from the bass, especially when we switch to the stereo. So what you may have noticed again is when the bass was in mono, we heard more of the melodic instruments, the piano, the acoustic guitar, the driving 16th note guitar, all kind of popping through more. When we switched to the stereo bass, we picked up, it felt more emotional. The bass felt like it was wrapping around, kind of giving the song a hug in a cool way, but we lost some detail in the instruments. If you're interested in some listening examples for mixing with a V versus mixing with a U, I can throw some different genres at you. So for rap, I'd recommend for a V-shaped mix to listen to like Kendrick Lamar's Humble. And if you're looking for something more U-shaped, B.O.B. by Outkast. In rock, the V, you could definitely listen to The Pretender by the Foo Fighters. For more of a soundscape, that U, Schism by Tool. Pop, anything by Dua Lipa, but definitely Don't Start Now, has a very tight V shape to it. And I'd say Billie Eilish, generally you get more of a U where you get bass spilling into the sides, but one by her would be something like Everything I Wanted. For indie rock, the Arctic Monkeys, Do I Want to Know, has that very tight, powerful V, where, anything really by Tame Impala or Bon Iver will have more of a smeared sound to it in that regard. And Bon Iver, probably like Holocene, something to that effect. And then punk, you could probably guess this one, American Idiot by Green Day has a really, really tight V to it. And then if you listen to something like Bad Religion's Sorrow, you'll notice, or The Clash, like a London Calling, you'll notice a little bit of a wider or smearing of the low end. So asking yourself, am I mixing this song to have a very tight V where the bass and the kick are really centered and strong in mono and the instruments are spilling out wide and bright, kind of creating that stereo image? Or am I looking for things to feel a little less defined, more gelled together, and for the bass to essentially feel a little bit more cinematic, a little bit more encompassing? And that's where we'd be leaning more into a U. So depending on what the material calls, choosing the wrong vibe, a U type shape for a mix that really should be a V, or a V-shaped mix for something that should feel more U-ish, is going to be a clear mistake right off the bat, and one I think that kind of goes under the radar when we're talking about common mistakes. And this is something that for me is very important to focus on.